Well, again, a pleasant good afternoon to you on this beautiful, sunny, and warm Monday afternoon. 49 degrees and climbing, and well, as I've said earlier, it's undoubtedly going to be the prettiest day of weather this week, so I hope you're able to enjoy it. Maybe get outside, do some things outside after you get done listening to the radio, or take us with you on your cell phone or on your battery-operated radio so that you don't miss this. What an exciting opportunity for us this afternoon to visit with Mr. Scott LeRette. Mr. LeRette, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Jerry. How are you?
The best day of my life. Thank you. It is so nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Glad to be back.
Although you're not really gone, you're kind of gone from Red Oak. We miss you and your family.
We get back enough. Yeah, we're just 45 minutes away.
All right. Scott was gracious enough. And do you have another appointment you need to be to, so I need to know when to kind of wrap up
I'm
here?
actually off today, so
all right.
I'm yours for a while or whatever.
We've got till
whatever you want to ask.
News Vinyl at 5 then, I guess,
right.
if we need to. Well, thanks for coming in. I think most of our listeners will know, although new people do keep moving into our area all along and may not know the LeRette family, longtime residents of the area. And Scott LeRette is with us today to update us relative to a venture that he and his family entered into some time ago. When did we start, Scott, the book organization? When did we start getting into going public with our lives?
Well, I guess about 15 years ago, I just started writing, and I've always kind of made notes and things like that. And that's what I did. In fact, I have my first official little spiral notebook. It's a 3x5 notebook. I have the first one. And it wasn't really stories as much as it was just bullet points, thoughts, and things that were important to me or I wanted to remember.
Okay.
And that actually became really important many years later.
But at that point, you weren't thinking necessarily publishing a book or doing a movie
not even
or
close.
Being a movie star. At that point, that was not your intent. It was just for your own personal information and records. And I've seen some of those notes. I mean, you were pretty good about that.
Well, it's pretty brutal too. I mean, because a lot of them are personal. I've shared most of them though, so I have been pretty, I guess, vulnerable would be the right word. But I hadn't even moved on to writing a blog yet, because even when I started the blog back in 2009, 2010, I still, a book was the furthest thing from my mind. In fact, because of how messed up and crazy I thought Teresa and me and the boys were, including our dogs, I thought we'd make a great TV show, like a cross between the Wonder Years and Parenthood and, throw some others in there. But so, yeah, I was thinking small screen even ahead of doing a book, so it wasn't on my mind.
So then the book was published when?
Came out in October 2014. Did really well, and it was in a hardback with full color photo insert into it, and was reprinted into a trade paperback, which is the large paperback, also on audio CD, Audible, etc. So it was on all the different platforms. And the thing about it is the poster for the movie's not out yet, but you can see the new book cover if you go to Amazon actually and find the book, and you'll see what a version of the new book is going to look like.
And again, my special guest, Scott LeRette. Scott, when we decided to do a book, what was the objective or the purpose of doing a book? Or what did you want to accomplish by that? Initially,
everything was for purely selfish purposes. It was for my own edification. It was therapy. It was my way of getting things out of my brain. And the blog was really good for that too. Things that I wanted to just put down onto paper. Things I was dealing with, things that I loved, things that I hated. And it was just a really good medium for me. And I've always been an avid reader, just an incredible reader, thanks to my mother. She instilled that in me. And I guess I could say the same for writing. I'd always take notes. And in fact, I'm one of those kinds of people that will add something to a list just so I can cross it right off if I've already done it. But so yeah, I knew that there was something there, but I didn't know it was going to be a book or anything like that. But in terms of how it evolved, I'd like to share a story with where Austin had broken a bone and he'd gotten a cast off, and we'd gotten home, and I believe he broke his ankle in the same day. And I'd talked to my oldest brother, Kevin, and that was when he'd told me, or he'd asked me, have you ever thought about writing a book? Because you can't make up your stories. You can't make up your life. And that's where I started investigating, and I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know that you had to get a literary agent, which was more, in the end, more difficult than getting a publisher. A publisher would not see you unless you were represented by an agent. So I had to go through that whole process and understand and learn how to get a literary agent. And literary agents are in Manhattan. Theatrical agents are in LA, as a rule, I should say. And so, yeah, I ended up writing about 90,000 words. And when I got my agent, we had hired writers to help me rewrite everything and polish it. And it just kind of went from there. We had multiple publishers that wanted it. So
All of this, though, was a new experience for you. I mean,
every step of the way was a first. And that's one of the things I like to share with people that are maybe trying something they've never done before, or, you know, a new job, a new adventure, a new something or other. I think it's an advantage, though, because I look back now, especially when making the movie, I think if maybe I would have known some of the things in advance, it maybe would have hindered me because it was a blessing maybe not knowing some of those things. But yes, every step of the way was a first, was new. And that meant I made lots of mistakes, a lot, and rejection, and it was just no after no after no. And not so much with the book. I had a lot of really good timing and good luck with, and things went very quickly with the publishing of the book. But with the movie, I ended up with an independent film company, and from a friend of a friend and whatnot. And I didn't like the way that was going, so I'd fired them. And at that point, I was kind of, I was kind of up in the air. I'm like, all right, I know where I'm going. I know the what and the why. I didn't know the how or the when. And I'll give you this, though. This is the number one thing. It's my mantra that during the last 15 years that I never strayed from. And that is, the only way I fail is if I quit. And from a faith standpoint, I know that my faith, he's not going to quit on me. So I just kind of kept that. And I've always had that in my back pocket. The only way I fail is if I quit. So if anyone ever asked me, I'd just tell them, oh, no, I'm not quitting. I'm never quitting. And here we are.
the book, The Unbreakable Boy, of course, is still available.
Yes.
Selling every day.
Yep.
And will have a new resurgence of interest.
It has.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie's not even out yet. But we'll, shortly before the movie premieres, the theatrical version of the book will come out. And it's the same book, essentially, but it's going to have a cover with Zachary Levi, who's Shazam, on the cover, with Austin's character on the cover as well. And it's the typical type of cover you see with the big gold star that says now a major motion picture. So that's super exciting. And at the same time, I started writing my second book about 2 weeks ago. And that's pretty thrilling to get back into that. And I've forgotten how much I really enjoy writing.
Just a quick overview of the second book.
Oh, it's a fair question. I did not, and my agent, we did not want to just simply make part 2 because it just doesn't need to be done. As much as people want to know about the story, I've been talking a lot the last few months, speaking engagements and things like that, and it just grows every day, the requests I'm getting. But people want to know as much about the last 5, 6, 7 years too. easily they want to know as much about how do you make a book, how'd you make a movie, because even though having the support of my incredible wife Teresa and my boys, as I said, every single step of the way I was on my own. And they want to know that. People want to know about that, because when I was working for GE, a good friend of mine was the HR manager for NBC Universal, which was a part of GE. And until one day, a couple of years ago, he'd told me, he goes, you don't get it. and then about 8 or 10 months ago, he's like, Scott, you step back and think about this. There are thousands and thousands of screenplays and independent films and things like that, but not only did you write a smash hit book, but you got a major motion picture with one of the biggest studios in the world, and it's going to be set for wide distribution, which it's going to be in about 95% of movie theaters in America and a large portion of Europe. He's like, step back and think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And he agreed with me, as does my partner. The way that got done was that I just agreed to not quit and have absolute faith.
The book. Did the book meet, exceed, or fall short of what your expectations and desire was for the book?
Exceeded expectations. Coming from a guy that's not a writer, not this or that, just I ended up with a bunch of stories that people seemed to like and they resonated with. And the same reasons that HarperCollins grabbed The Unbreakable Boy is the reason that Kingdom Story Company is the production company. Lionsgate is the studio. Look at it this way, the production company is who makes the movie. The studio is essentially, lack of a better term, the checkbook. But I forgot where we were going with that question, or what your question was there.
Did it fall short of, meet, or exceed your expectations, the book?
Exceeded, but I think, you see, what happened, the book did really well. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I'd realized that HarperCollins was just kind of sitting on the rights. And I wanted to do more than just have that book. So again, I had to learn and understand what it takes to reacquire the theatrical rights to my intellectual property. It was a legal process. I figured that you had to create a certain document, and I asked them and told them, I'm making a TV show. I'd like my rights back. And they're like, fine. They signed it. And here we are today. And fortunately, they're thrilled that a major motion picture is being made out of one of their books. So they're on board, and we're all good to go.
All right, let's. What can you tell me about the release of the film at this point?
Well, the movie was set to release 2 weeks ago, March 18th. In fact, marketing for The Unbreakable Boy started Christmas Day, and the first 2 months were primarily focused on the Austin character, and there was a teaser and a poster that came out, and they were in all kinds of movies, from Batman, Spider-Man, Sing 2 to, there were too many to mention that people saw them in all over the country and in Europe, and that continued to run. It was pretty exciting when we went out to Village Point about 6 weeks ago and saw our poster saying coming soon. That was pretty surreal. But mid-January, Lionsgate, we got the phone call, because we always had conference calls every other week. And they just determined that because everything's going so well with the country turning the corner on COVID, people starting to go out more, and the fact that the film was going to be set for wide distribution, which means basically you're going to be able to see it anywhere. They made the determination that they want to be in that number of theaters, but also be filled to capacity, and not while some people are still leery. So the next question I'm sure you're asking is, what's the date? I do not know. My director does not know. It's a lot more than, and this is what I've learned, it's not just picking a day and a weekend in determining what other movies are out, you've also got to determine where the lead actors are. They working? Are they available to be at the premieres? So it's a pretty big decision, and they only want to do it one time, what they call pushing the premiere date. So I don't know. If I gave any type of idea, like late summer, something like that, it'd be purely speculation. So I don't know. But as my partner, though, Peter had told me, it's going to be premiered. They have a lot invested to make it premiere theatrically. And if they ever wanted to go straight to streaming, it already would have happened long ago. So we're excited about that. Now, I can tell you, I know that the premieres they want to do are in LA and Nashville. And people might be curious as to Nashville. And believe it or not, it's not just music in Nashville anymore. It's a huge movie scene. And the premieres in Nashville are actually more well attended and more energy and more exciting than many of the LA ones. We're also going to have something smaller in Omaha. And I've made sure, too, that Red Oak is going to be available. It's going to be available for the theater downtown to show.
Thank you for that.
You bet.
The movie fall short, meet, or exceed what you would have hoped when you first started thinking about this?
No brainer. The movie's going to be better than my book.
Well, that speaks pretty highly.
John Gunn is our writer. He's our director. And I'll tell you, we talked with him, texted, emailed for about a 6 or 8 month period. Every single day he would talk to one of us and go over just the most minute detail of our life. And in fact, I questioned him on the use of the word flapjack. I said, Austin would not say that. And he called us. He actually FaceTimed us, and he had video of Austin saying flapjack. It's like, Scott, I know more about you currently than you do yourself. And it's another funny little quip, though, is that I questioned him on, I shouldn't say this because once you tell someone your pet peeve, no, I shouldn't do that.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't like being called, oh no, this is horrible, I shouldn't do this. There's a certain word that I don't like being called, and he used that in the book.
That would be?
I'm not going to say the word. But.
It's in the book?
No, it's not, because I said, don't say that, because I never say that word. When someone calls me that, it just makes me cringe. But instead, I'm 57 years old, and my favorite word is still dude. So just change it to dude. And he did. So in terms of its accuracy, I learned so much. There's creative license in any process. Even when I wrote my book, there may be 2 events. I can think of one specifically where they occurred, I think, 3 years apart. But I put them together because they were concerning a specific sentiment or feeling, and it didn't matter the date anyway. And those things are done. So will people that read the book think any differently? I think they're going to be incredibly happy with the way the story comes out because it's so good.
How long is the film?
1 hour and 47 minutes.
We don't know when it's going to premiere.
No.
Well, when you know, you'll let me know, won't you?
Oh, the world will know. It will be.
But you'll know first.
Well, I hope so. Yes, absolutely.
Scott LeRette with us in our studios, and what a pleasure to get a chance to visit with him about The Unbreakable Boy, the book, the film, and their life. And having said that, Scott, let's go back at this point and do a basic on The Unbreakable Boy, how it came about your early life with Teresa and then the boys, and how The Unbreakable Boy story developed. Give us the basic information on that. A lot of people don't know that.
Well, Teresa and I met on January 19th of 1994, and we had a baby November 10th of 1994. People asked us if we were in love, and I'm like, were we in love? I don't even know if I liked her. She didn't like, did she like me? I don't know if my wife liked me at the time. We were like roommates, and we finally did We got married 11 months later. Austin had been born in November. We got married December 3rd. And we were, of course, for me, it started, I don't know if the roots of it are in high school, I don't know, but at least in college. When I went to college, there are a couple things that happened. I left my faith behind. I walked out the door to college, I left God behind, and I started having fun. And of course, for me, the pretty much the basic drug of choice was alcohol. I wasn't partial, but it was mostly alcohol, and that just continued and continued and continued. And I associated my social things with alcohol as well. And so, were Teresa and I falling in love? I mean, it was a slow process. It's taken 28 years to get where we are today. But we then had Logan 2 years later, and we thought the move back to Red Oak, Iowa would be the right thing to do. And it was. I remember us talking and just saying, you know, we need to be around the most caring and loving support system that we have. That would be, you know, friends and family. And at the time, Red Oak was the ticket. I wasn't fixed yet. I'm still not fixed, but we felt that would solve and, you know, at least get us on the right path. And it was. Red Oak was wonderful for us.
So that was what year?
That would have almost 20 years ago. So I think it was 2000. Teresa will probably call in and tell me that I'm off by 2 or 3 years. But we lived in Red Oak about 17 years. We've been in Papillion a year and a half. So about 18 or 19 years ago. Yeah.
So the move was good.
The move was good. I hadn't yet reached, I guess, where I needed to be. I hadn't fallen, you know, taken my fabulous fall from grace until, you know, I write about it. That night, I always refer to it as that night. It's the one thing really that I still have trouble, you know, thinking about, you know, because it just, I put my boys' lives in danger, and I'm so embarrassed by that, you know, that and ashamed of that last night that I ever, you know, consumed anything.
It's an amazing, truly, truly amazing story. And with honest to goodness transparency. And an opportunity, it certainly seems to me, without a doubt, for people to see and learn some very valuable lessons about life from your honesty, openness, transparency, and sharing of your experience.
Yes. My partner, Peter, had told me early on that, he said first, because I had this elevator pitch that I always used to give, and I've said it a bazillion times, but it was kind of like this. It's a story about this autistic kid who's broken almost every bone in his body. He's had his heart removed, repaired, and replaced. He's got an addict father, a suicidal mother, a perfect younger brother. It's a story of faith. It's dark. It's hilarious. It's inspiring. He heard me say that once on a different radio show, actually. And he called me and said, number one, because that's not your story. Because all those little things are in there. But it's much bigger than that. We don't know who or what the Unbreakable boy is. And that's something, by the way, too, that everybody assumes they know what the Unbreakable boy is. But when we first met several years ago, he told me, he goes, no, it's not that. It's much more than that. And your story is going to change the world. He goes, it's at a time and it's at a place where we need something like this. And that's what the publisher and the studio both had talked about. They use the business term cross-marketability, but in layman's terms, it's basically you've got a story that resonates with all kinds of people. Secular, Christian, addict, special needs, whatever. And sure enough, over the years, I've been blown away by the phone calls and messages and emails from strangers telling me my dad read your book and he stopped drinking in 2016 or something like that. And it's really humbling, extremely. And that's, I guess, in the end, what I want out of it. I just want other people to realize that no matter, because we're still broken. We're highly flawed. Writing a book and making a movie doesn't fix us. We're working on it every day, still. But I hope people can see that no matter the challenges, there's always tomorrow. And it will always get better. It just does. I think you've got to have that mindset. You have to.
Very, very, very well said. Kind of a summation of the situation with your son Austin and what he went through and your family went through. When did you first understand that Austin was different than Scott?
I think officially it was more like when he was 10 or 11 years old, but we saw things earlier. I was in denial. I didn't want to see the things Teresa saw. And it wasn't until we got that diagnosis that we started to really truly understand that he was different than other kids. And that's the thing too that's to this day is a challenge because people don't truly understand what autism is, because Austin is social and verbal to a fault. He's over the top social and verbal, and there's other kids on the spectrum and adults on the spectrum that can't talk or can't be touched. So there's so much gray in that whole area. And I'll tell you that the biggest challenge we have today, because Austin's a grown man, but he can't control talking. We all have friends and family that they're a talker. No. Austin, and he knows it, he understands it, that he can't control talking. He does not know how to stop, he cannot stop. And, Austin lives with us. He will live with us. And that is just it. I kid about the closet we hide in. And we still do that because it's just mind-numbingly frustrating. I love my boys. We love our boys more than life. But it's, one day at a time.
So some of the physical barriers, and you just briefly alluded to that earlier, some of the physical barriers that your family and Austin particularly have gone through to get to this point.
Well, Austin and Teresa both have osteogenesis imperfecta, which is a genetic bone disease. It has to do with the collagen, the T cells, and all these different things. That basically, they have bones that break really easily. And I always like to say that really the only major bone Austin hasn't broken is his femur, because he's done fingers, toes, tibias, fibulas, coccyx, ribs, sternum, elbow, hand, fingers, toes, his nose, and his skull. So we've been fortunate because he hasn't had a lot of major breaks, even though he had a bone in his foot break about 2 years ago that had to be recasted 3 or 4 times because it wasn't healing. And, there are other things we deal with, from his seizures and things like that. And the bones are probably the least of our concerns.
So we've got another book that we're just embarking on that venture right now.
Right. As I said, the theatrical version, which is just, if you go on and look it up, you can find the new book cover, is the same book, but that'll come out about 3 or 4 weeks prior to the movie premiere. And book number 2 is, I'm writing it right now. It's exciting. I'm thrilled because it's not just going to be book 2. It's not going to be part 2. There's a lot more to it than that. I've got a lot more to say, and I don't know if we already tread over this territory or not, but there's a lot more that people want to know just besides our story. In terms of the medical and the Unbreakable story. There's a lot more, especially just everything that's happened the last 6-7 years. And the way that these things have happened for us and for me. a lot of it still fascinates me, and I'm going to share all that, and so that's a thrill.
Scott LeRette with us in our studios this afternoon. A pleasure to visit with him about life and the Unbreakable Boy book and upcoming to be released sometime in the relative near future, a movie that we're all excited about having the opportunity to see, and a pleasure to visit with him. Scott, your parents are?
Pardon me?
Your parents are?
Marcia and Dick?
Dick and Marcia
Yep.
LeRette. Everybody knew Dick and Marcia LeRette, and
Oh, I miss them so much.
miss them a lot. You know, just great people. Just absolutely great people. Siblings are?
Kevin, Kent, and Brian.
And most everybody knows them to some extent or other.
Mm-hmm.
Brian was smart enough to still stay around here, so he's still here in Red Oak.
Kent, too.
And Kent, yep.
Yep.
Yep. I remember when I came here and Kent and Sarah had the appliance store, and I'd go out there and record sitting on a 5-gallon pail and record commercials for him.
With Aaron.
Yeah,
I
yep.
remember.
Yep. Had some great times. And again, just a really great family. I really appreciate you coming in talking with us. Where you live in Papillion now?
Correct.
Have for a year and a half.
Right.
Next move for you now that you do still have a real job, although you're a very financially well cared for author and movie star. Austin's kind of right. You're a rock star. You don't really need to be working. You do still have a day job.
It's so funny because Austin, he doesn't understand why I work. And I'll just put it this way. You can have a best-selling book, but then you can have a John Grisham best-selling book. I didn't sell 10 million copies. Now, people ask me that quite often, and the way I kind of answer it is, my hope is that in 12 or 18 months I'm able to maybe change somewhat what I do, because I've been doing a lot of speaking. I've gotten several requests for extremely large venues to do, and booked for this summer already. That too is so humbling, and the movie's not even out yet. But I'd love to be able to share our story more.
Speaking tour.
Part of it, yes. And write, continue to write. And if some people don't know, my movie-making partner is Peter Facinelli. And his initial big movie was Can't Hardly Wait. That was kind of a teen heartthrob movie many years ago. And more recently, people know him from Twilight. And he's one of the producers on the film. I'm an executive producer. And his thoughts all along is, we still want the small screen. Because there are too many stories. There's too much content. There was way too much for us to put it all into one movie. But he's like, we got to do television next. We've got to do television. So there's a lot on the horizon.
Move to California?
Never.
That was quick.
Yeah.
No. Never.
No. It's too bad. It's just too expensive.
Take me back to the extent that you can and will and want to and are comfortable. You mentioned when you walked out the door to go to college, you left your faith, you kind of shifted gears, went a total different direction, I think we could say. Would that be accurate?
Pretty much.
Tell me a little bit, as you're comfortable of doing that, of where you are with that now and how that happened and why.
Oh, very excellent. I did. I think what happened to me happens, it's not just small town teenagers. I think it happens all over. But it was so easy to, I grew up the way I did. I grew up Catholic. Mom was she'd march us all off to church every Sunday morning. But when I went to college, all bets were off. The last thing I had on my mind was church and my faith. And that just continued and continued. And I learned what it was like to be out in public on my own. Joined a fraternity and just thought I was something else. And I about flunked out of college, and it just didn't go well for me. And I think you can get into problems, and I don't think they are things that happen overnight. And for me, let's just say I was 20 years old, 18 years old. It took me more than 20 years to just crash and burn. 25, let's just say 25 years. It took that long for it to happen for me. And it was for me a one-night thing. I determined it's over, because if I go any lower than I just went, I'm going to die and I won't recover. And it started, and it was very apparent to me that my sobriety and my faith were, big word alert here, were inexorably linked, as Teresa would like to make fun of me for using certain words, but they are, because that's another one of those things that I always keep with me. I know that if one of those were to fail, the other would follow. So I absolutely believe my faith and my sobriety are linked. And we did move to Papillion. In July, it'll be 2 years. And we, throughout COVID, visited a lot of churches, mostly online, watching live streaming and things like that. And but it's something that's always present, and always owe him thanks first. And even though I knew I never was going to quit, Teresa would always be the one to tell me, let go. Just let go. It's all good. God's got it. And she was right, of course. And I did that so often. Things that I couldn't control, or I didn't like the way they were going. I've always tried to instill in the boys to take the high road. I've had a few things just recently that I'd shared with Teresa. This such and such happened. How'd you deal with it? Well, I did this. I just turned the other cheek, right? I'm far from perfect, but I hope that I've instilled that upon Logan in Austin to always, be the bigger man and do what's right. And for me, that was being a better dad, a better husband, a better friend to my wife and my family and other people.
So there was that night.
Correct.
That night when you apparently made a very real decision and commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And life has been different ever since.
Correct.
Not perfect.
Far from it.
Not without some challenges, but life has been different because of the decision you made that night. Would that be accurate?
Yes, and that was a time, too, where Teresa had talked with my three brothers, because they'd all talked about doing some type of, it's hard to even say this, but an intervention, something, and then this happened. So that never needed to happen, and I just stopped. I'm really, really fortunate that nothing did happen that night, because I don't remember a lot about it.
I remember, and maybe you will, one of the first times that we met and discussed this in private, not on the air,
Mm-hmm.
about the book and your thoughts and your notes and your memos and your diaries, and I remember us discussing that I really believed that God was in it, that something bigger than just a best-selling book would result because of it, that lives would be changed, that people would come to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, would realize there is hope in what at that moment seems to be a hopeless situation. And now you have the testimonies, a very few of the kabillions that are out there, but you have a few of the testimonies of how that, in fact, has happened because of, in part, that night, the decision you made, the life you have lived, and the ways, I'm going to say, the Lord has led and blessed you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tremendous story, Scott.
Well, thank you. I didn't know if there was a question there or not, but it's
Tremendous story.
thank you.
And I thank God for the decision that you made for you, for your family, for the opportunities that have come your way. And again, that doesn't happen easily. I mean, I can't even imagine all of the things that you've had to go through in developing these new relationships and channels and knowledge and information. And, I mean, it's a tremendous story. And you never quit.
No, and I didn't, and I'm still not. But people have told me, thanks for being so vulnerable, and I think there's a huge misperception about what that word means, and that they associate it with weakness. And I think that's just so far off, because I think part of our story is taking those perceived weaknesses and turning them into strengths. I think my vulnerability maybe is a superpower, because I use that to my advantage. And it kind of goes along the same lines of not knowing everything. Some of those things I didn't know. I'm glad maybe I didn't know those things. But what do they say? You don't know what you don't know. And I think some of those were times where I'm glad. But I'm glad I could share. And you mentioned something to me a few times ago that we talked about. You prefaced a question with, "I hope you don't mind me asking you this." And I think my response at the time was, well, I wrote a book about me. I opened up my family and our life to the world, so I don't think your question's probably going to be too bad, so go ahead and shoot.
I know nothing about Teresa's family. Is she involved in this? Or her family involved? Obviously she is, but is her family involved in this? Does she have family that's into this as well, like your family? Or
Well, obviously they live in North Carolina, and they're a part of the boys' lives, and we talk with them consistently, and we're going to try to get out there this Christmas. But there's part of the movie that includes one of the sisters, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat for her as well. But yep, she has two sisters, her mom and dad, all out in a small town called Shelby, North Carolina. So
very, very interesting. Scott LeRette with us. Scott, what else would you like to tell our listeners today? What would you like for them to most take away from this conversation, and who and where you are now?
Well, I think that I've shared the things that are most important to me, and I think my family, some of the things that we maybe make us who we are. But everybody wants to know, when's the movie coming out? They do. And my answer right now, it's not because I know and can't tell. I do not know, and it's killing me. And Peter, John Gunn, our writer-director, all of us are like, hey, we're just waiting. It's the folks at the top levels of Lionsgate that are making those decisions, and right now we do not know. I know that there's going to be a several-week window, probably closer to 6 to 8 weeks, that we'll know, and then when it will premiere. So at that time, marketing will recommence, and you'll see a lot more in social media and whatnot. But it's still super exciting. It's surreal. People have always said that, and I've always used that word too, because it is. It's kind of surreal and humbling to step back sometimes and realize that this studio and production company, they've made this massive multi-million-dollar production about a story based on you, pointing at me. And I'm like, scratch my head sometimes still. Pinch myself.
Well, it is an amazing, amazing story, and such a pleasure to get a chance to visit with you. Don't be a stranger. Stay in touch with me. Let me know what's happening about the new book that you're just getting going good on.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, and keep me updated on what's happening with the film.
I think the next time we probably talk, I hope it'll be that talk where I'll tell you when the premiere is. Absolutely.
Well, I would like that too, but don't necessarily wait that long. You're always welcome.
I know. Of course.
Really nice to see you again and visit with you, and thank the Lord for what I feel like the role He has played in putting this together with the right people in the right way in the right time and the right decisions. And, you're blessed. You're a blessed man.
We all are. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing it with us.
You're welcome, Jerry.
Take care.
Have a wonderful day.
Scott LeRette, my very special guest, the Unbreakable Boy book, and sometime soon to come out film. It's all ready. It's done. You've seen the whole thing several times.
Yeah. Yes.
Bring a copy over and let's look at it together sometime.
I'd be put in Facebook jail, or not Facebook jail, Lionsgate jail.
I see.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that for you. So, but I will tell you, I'm very happy for you and for your family. And again, I pray that the Lord will bless this effort and good things will come out of it far beyond what our greatest realization or expectation is at this point. So,
Absolutely.
couldn't be happier for you. Thank you, my friend. Scott LeRette, very special guest this afternoon. KCSI-FM, Valeska